He has pretty good proof. Another guy named Aregro, he wrote a book and said that actually Jesus was a rabbi who used this mushroom in his things, and he could read Sumerian. It came out of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And there are several locations in both the Rig Veda and in the Christian Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, that talk about this mushroom. In some people's interpretation. We don't know for sure. So it seemed to be something that these shamans were doing to get into a religious experience. Again, this is not a lecture about psychedelics. I'm not trying to convince people to go out and do psychedelics. But I'm trying to give you the concept that these mushrooms have a fundamental frequency that's interesting. Now, Aregro goes further on to say that the center of the Roman Catholic Church is based around the sacrament of this mushroom. I know that's really hard to believe, that you would actually have people in the Vatican taking this mushroom, especially when they go into conclave. But doesn't the cardinal look a little bit like an Amanita muscaria mushroom? I mean, he's dressed up, he has this little wee side veil, he has the things like this. Oh my God! They're dressed up like an Amanita muscaria. So I started doing a little bit more research in this. And by the way, you can find all kinds of things on YouTube if you want to about this. There's tons of really good video on this. So the shamans in Mongolia, what they did is they would go around and collect these mushrooms. And one of the things you want to do is you want to dry them. They work better if they're dried, actually, not in their red state. They should actually be in a yellow state for them to be done. And some people actually think it literally is a chalice shape, which literally is what's the chalice that Arthur was fun? The golden...
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail thing. Some people think it's the Holy Grail. And there's a whole line of thought going down here. But these shamans will go along and put it in the trees to dry. Well, this experience had actually happened to me. Once upon a time, I was visiting some friends in northern Alberta, and I was walking through. They lived quite remote, and you had to hike into their place. And I come across this spruce tree that looked like a Christmas tree, because there was all these red bulbs hanging out and all of it. And I realized that the squirrels had harvested the mushrooms and put them all in this tree. For all sake and purpose, it looked like a Christmas tree with all the bulbs on it. Then I finally realized what squirrels do all winter long. They didn't have big screen TVs, but they still had a hibernation strategy that was pretty cool. But it looked just like a Christmas tree. But that's how the local Mongolian shamans did it. They would take it and put it in the trees. Okay? And so they gather all these things up, and then when they're dried and stuff like that, they put it in these great big, huge kind of burlap bags. And they go around and they deliver them to the people at their special festival in the early winter. And so what they would do, just like the cardinals, they would dress up like Amanita muscarias. And of course, these people were called the flying reindeer people, so they went around in a sled, and they had reindeer that hauled the sled around. Okay? And in Mongolia, in the winter, I don't know if you know, everyone lives in a yurt or what they call gurs over there. You have two doors. You have the front door, but if there's a lot of snow, it'd bank up against it. And the only way they could get in is get through the roof thing or the chimney. So you have this guy with a great big bagger on thing coming along in a sleigh, right? And as he's on this sleigh with reindeer in front of it, by the way, dressed up like an Amanita muscaria, coming down the chimney with this great big huge bag and giving out gifts on December 25th. Who do you think that guy is? That sounds like old St. Nick. Oh my God, there's lots of myths around this mushroom. So what's this got to do with our changing times? What I'm really saying is there looks like there's myths and cultures that have to do with mushrooms. This group of Mongolians, by the way, there were 26,000 years. There was a mass grave beside this stele that was found 2 years ago, and there was 13 skulls in there, and they all look like this. Notice the shape of the head. They look cone head, don't they? They did it before Saturday Night Live. Here's one of Egypt. This is the Akhenaten group. They have cone heads. The Tibetans have cone heads. Here's a picture I took in Merida, the main museum in the Yucatan. Okay, this to be an upper class Mayan. Sorry, the light in here is not right, but it's a cone head. Here's one in Peru. So we have the Mongolian Siberians, we have the Tibetans, we have the Egyptians, we have the Mayan, we have the Flathead Lake just south of us in Montana, and we have the Peruvians all having cone-shaped heads. Were they a different species? Were they the original ETs that came down here? Of course, the archaeologists have got a whole story about how they created their heads and stuff like that. And probably some of it's true, probably some is not. Why would you have a group of people all over the world changing their heads? It's not like they're trying to do the new style of Nike. They weren't picking up AT&T 26,000 years ago and saying, hey, what are you doing with your heads these days? Can we market this? They were literally shaping their heads. Did they have a different set of genetics? Some people think they did. So these ancient people were very interesting. The next download I had was very much closer to the original of the Mayan calendar. And it took place in a place called Azapa. And Azapa is right here. It's on the Guatemala-Mexican border. Okay? And it literally came into existence as a period of time around 300 BC or BCE to about 100 AD. It was the Azapians, and they kind of be the transition period between the Olmec and the Maya. And they literally are the group that discovered the galactic center. They also did this whole thing around how they did it. They did various ceremonies. And one of the reasons that their ceremonies are kind of significant to us, when you look around their ruins and stuff like that, you will see that a lot of it's dedicated to a mushroom. This mushroom is obviously Silbus mexicanus. And I'm not talking one statue there, I'm talking hundreds. And some of these are bigger than me. They're huge. They also had many of them to do to a frog. This frog, by the way, has these psychedelic glyphs coming off its back. And it's called Brufrock marinus, which has a chemical in its glands called dimethyltryptamine. Emphasis on the word tryptamine. This group of chemicals is very, very hallucinatory. When I say it's very hallucinatory, it's literally LSD times about 50 to 100. Quite hallucinatory. Okay. So, in their shamanic ceremonies, they would take these together. The emperors, the kings, the head of state in the Mayan religion were also shamanic. So we call them shamanic kings. And they would have to do vision quests, vision journeys, to be able to help tell their people when to plant their crops, what they're doing. So again, I take on this presence of this young boy this time. When I say young boy, I'm saying he's about bar mitzvah age, 13 or so, and he's about to go through this whole ceremony. And this ceremony is well orchestrated. We know exactly where it is, and we know exactly the day it was. It was December 20th, 167 BCE. The ceremony. Because I could look up at the sky and see the astrological configurations at that point in time, and that's the only time within 300 years, the only time that existed for that thing. And with the iPad applications these days, you can find out where the stars were at that point in time. Okay, so we got the date. And he's going through this ceremony, and there's copal smoke, and there's chanting and all these things. And these substances are given to me, or given to this young boy. By the way, his name ended up being One Ahau. And there was this group of shamans behind pushing the whole process on. And the goal was to be able to get to Xibalba Bay, the center of the galaxy. Now let's put this in perspective. When the conquistadors came to Mesoamerica, in 1521, most of Europe still thought the planet was flat. Right? And they were still adding and subtracting in Roman numerals. 1700 years earlier, the Mayans, Azapians, were already doing the square root of 5 and working with pi, and were contemplating our relationship with the center of the galaxy. A little bit more advanced. How many people today are contemplating our relationship with the center of the galaxy? Well, this shaman king was doing that. And the reason he wanted to do it, he wanted to go to the center of the galaxy, Hamnagku would be their name, and the symbol for Hamnagku is this symbol right here, Hamnagku, the center of the galaxy, which actually looks kind of ET-ish, doesn't it? But that's an ancient symbol from the Mayans, and it literally represents their god. But their god is not a being, it is what we'd call the Milky Way. Because Xibalba Bay is literally the middle of the galaxy. So literally he'd sit on a chair, and he would take these various things through this thing, and he'd be pushed by these other shamans, and he'd project themselves out to the center of the galaxy and go ask Hamnagku what was happening and come back with information so he could be able to give it. That was his journey. Pretty bold for a little 13-year-old guy, but that's what he decided to do. So with the aids of zoology,